Now we're going to switch to the pitching side. We're going to start with the starting rotation. Now this rotation, you look at that two-headed monster with Julio and Kersh, and then there are some questions. I mean, will Dustin May bounce back and return to form? Usually the second year after Tommy John is one pitcher starts to really gain steam. Can Noah Syndergaard get close to the guy he was before the injuries? Will the young pitchers emerge? What is just your general outlook of the starting rotation right now and some of the big questions?
I'll take 1 through 5. I'll take this against any rotation. Not necessarily based on like power and, oh, these guys are going to blow up. You know, it's not Scherzer and Verlander, but 1 through 5 is a unit. And they compensate each other. They play off well off of each other. So concerns, of course, there's always concerns about sustainability. How long can the first 5 keep it together until Gonsolin comes back? How good is Pepe going to be to begin with? And to say, hey, I'm anchored here. Find another way to get me in again.
Yeah.
And we saw what happened last year with Tyler Anderson. Okay, Tyler Anderson and Gonsolin is supposed to be, you know, piggybacking, right? Before you know it, there's an injury, and Tyler Anderson said, no, I'm taking over this whole thing. Becomes an all-star, wins 15 games, and things change. Julio Urias is a horse. This guy is a freaking horse, man. Not enough credit given to him. Julio Urias, 37-10 last 2 years. Nobody better in baseball in terms of wins and losses. And wins do matter, please, for pitchers. Wins do matter. Guys go out to compete, but they also go out to win games. Clayton Kershaw brought this to mind years ago saying, you think I go out there just to, like, get my 6 innings and just quality start? I want to win. Now, they can control it. We know that. But at the same time, I think Julio Urias, what he does and bringing that bulldog mentality, the attack against anybody, 1 through 9, he gets better as the season goes along. He's proven that he is a true ace. Dustin May, I'm glad you mentioned this. Now, second year after Tommy John is when we really see the results. The velocity and the stuff coming out of his hand in spring training was absolute filth. Uncomfortable at bat. He's coming in from that angle, a nice whip in action with that slider, the sinker, and the changeup. Yeah, Kersh, who you can never discount Kersh. I mean, 22 starts last year, becomes an all-star, opens up, Dodger Stadium. He's going to go out there and just try to carve you out somehow. And I want you to look at this since you're a baseball rat. Look at Kershaw's ERA last year and take away those 2 stars in Colorado.
Yeah, I mean,
it drops like to the ones. It's crazy. But for Kersh credit, he goes, Colorado or not, those days, I just did not have it, and I would have lost anywhere. I would have gotten hit anywhere. Now we move out to Noah Syndergaard. My concern with Syndergaard, or observation is, I know he's chasing velocity, and, Thor is a guy that obviously, look at his build. He's impressive. He's thrown 100 miles an hour before. He's been dominant before. But I think gradually is where he's going to get better. We see some 94s and 95s in spring training, but he's lived at 92 pretty much, right? 92, 94. He can be effective there. The strength will come back after his surgery, and also he's also building up. He's got a good enough sinker to keep the defense alive and active to help him go longer in games. He does have a strikeout pitch when he designs patterns of pitches that can maybe get that fastball up and elevate later and split with that slider. But I think the less he chases the radar gun, the better off he's going to be. Because, man, I'm seeing it for so many years. I mentioned this to Dave Bassett the other day. I saw John Lackey when he first came up with the Angels. Live arm, big curveball, but looking up to see what the radar gun says. And when it didn't read the right way, even Mike Scioscia shared this with me. He goes, sometimes we want to turn off the radar gun because it gets in his head. But I think overall, Lackey became a guy that says, this is what I have. I'm 92 today. This is what I have. So I think for Noah Syndergaard, because he knows he can compete, his stuff is good enough, and he's imposing presence on the mound, find out what is working that day and go with it. And before you know it, because all these guys know when they sign with the Dodgers as projects, there's something a little extra there, like Andrew Heaney found out last season, right? And others have found out that between Mark Pryor and Connor McGinnis, there's a lot in which they can tinker with you and say, velocity will come, but trust the process here. You don't chase that we're going to make you a better pitcher. And I think overall that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I think that's why this organization has been able to sustain winning for so many years, because they max guys out, because they're able to sign guys that really could have gotten more years. I mean, Syndergaard could have got a multi-year deal somewhere else, but he says the Dodgers turn everything into gold, and he wanted to pitch for this organization. He also said that he thought he could get back to throwing 99, to throwing 100. Well, Thor isn't throwing as many thunderbolts this year so far, but is there anything you're seeing mechanically as far as just the way he's looking out there that tells you that, hey, maybe it is going to be coming down the line where we see that triple-digit heat once again? Or do you think he really needs to just kind of reinvent himself and go with his current mix and just try to be effective in that sense?
To me, I'm kind of in between. I'm saying, well, whatever works that day. If you're 92, pitch at 92. In other words, that elevated fastball better be really elevated for you to get people out, right? Use that slider. But I also trust it because of the way he works, and this guy works so hard, man. And it's not just like during the season. It's like in the off season. He studies. He does his homework. He wants to get back to that proud thing and say, hey, you need to respect my fastball at 95, 96, 97, 98. That'll come with time. I think as he builds up, as he really goes and checks all these marks that the Dodgers have put in front of him, he's going to find out that even without thinking about velocity, the velocity will be there. I mean, from arm slots to repeating his motion to direction to, as Oral Hershiser taught me a long time ago, use the slope, man. That slope's there for a reason. You don't have to force it. It's going to help you get there. So he needs to keep repeating mechanics, make sure his arm is on time in a good spot, so velocity will come. But I can't admire a guy enough that says, I want to get back to that. I love that. But at the same time, don't get too caught up saying that and get away from what you need to do, which is execute the next pitch.
Yeah, and after his recent start, he even said, I'm not focusing as much on velocity. And I think that has to be the mindset for him, because just look at Clayton Kershaw. He's a guy that was throwing 95, 96. He was throwing more four-seam fastball. Now he throws more slider than the four-seam fastball. And with Syndergaard, I think it's really just about locating that two-seam fastball, that sinker down the zone. You saw him throw more changeup. So I want to see him reinvent. He talked about his mechanics and going downhill. He has one of the best extensions in the league. So that's still going to play up. I think it's for him just about getting that confidence back and just really knowing that, hey, I'm not the same Thor that I was, but I can still go out there and be an outgetter. You look at Tyler Anderson last year. He had some big strikeout games towards the end, but really it was about finding that changeup down in the zone and that cutter and just finding that new money pitch. So I think Syndergaard is just fine. It's just about not rushing the process of getting back to where you were. But I was going to ask you more questions about Julio Urias, because Julio Urias is really fascinating to me. I think this is one of the big major storylines, not just for the Dodgers, but really in all of Major League Baseball heading into this season, because last year he was fantastic at 2.16 ERA, led the National League. He's now the Dodgers opening day starter. To me, that feels like it's almost a courting process from this organization saying, hey, you could be the guy, not just this year, but be the opening day starter for years to come. We saw Kershaw run off 8 straight starts. How big do you think it is, just the perception-wise, of him just getting that opening day start and really being the Urias, as I call him, for this Dodgers organization?
Well, Julio, el culiche.
El culiche.
Urias, to me, I like to see, first of all, be a Dodger for life. I hope that there's an agreement in place at some point, where he is a Dodger for life and just concentrate on pitching and playing baseball. Julio has overcome a whole lot, from the eye situation as a youngster to his shoulder, and the care the Dodgers have had through the years with him. They cared about him so much, they kind of shielded him a little bit more, eventually ended up getting hurt. But I say all this because there's something in this guy in here that you can't replace, man. This guy wants it bad.
He's got that dog.
Yes, he does. He is a dog, man. I love that. A Mexicano dog, man. He does, man.
Got that pedo.
He wants to carve you out and just destroy you as a hitter, which is great. He also is a guy that you watch his reactions on the mound, and it bothers him when he doesn't do well. He doesn't execute a pitch. He's gotten better at not building off a pitch that was not called. I mean, that used to really get in his way until he realizes, as he matured, well, one pitch, okay, I got good enough stuff. If I didn't get that pitch, I'm going to get the next one. And he does, and he stays in the attack. Remember, towards the beginning of last year, it's like, oh, my God, Julio's only throwing 91, 92. Is Julio out of shape? Is Julio? And then it's like, all of a sudden, he keeps building and building and building. And people were questioning Dave Roberts, says, why are you taking him out after 5 innings? Well, there was a shortened spring training. And even though he only has 85 pitches, I got to take care of this young arm. He's important to us. And we saw why towards the end. He's huge for this team. Julio, the stuff that's emerged in terms of repertoire is pretty basic, but it's electric, man. Julio knows that if he can work your eyes, knees to your ankles early in the count, that 93 upstairs is going to look like 97. And he's become an artist at doing that. And that's why he's so savvy. He studies well. He's had Kershaw on his corner, and watching Kershaw and talking to Kershaw has been one of the pluses in his career. But there's guys now watching and asking Julio questions for a reason. This guy's won a lot of games, and he knows how to keep you in a game and compete for you. Julio, to me, as a former infielder, is somebody that I would have loved playing behind, because I can feel that energy. I can be the guy saying, Julio's just saying, this guy's not going to hit me by the look and by his actions, where you want to hit the ball to me all the time, because I want to just be behind this guy and catch every single ball. And then you look at him maybe incorporating a little cutter, which could be big. I saw him working on it. It spreads his zone a little bit more. Last year, I recall, early in the season, he had a big strikeout against Manny Machado, like a bases loaded in San Diego. And I went to Machado the next day. I said, Manny, Julio on that pitch that you were not expecting, right? He goes, not at all. He goes, the old Julio would have said, I'm going to challenge you now. This Julio is back-to-back changeups and got him. And to me, it was like, if Manny Machado says that about you can't anticipate or guess who he was or what he's going to throw, it's a sign of a guy that really has grown up.
Yeah, and that's some of my favorite things. Some of my favorite things about Julio are that competitive fire that you just mentioned, the way he challenges guys. One at-bat that comes to mind from last year is him versus Juan Soto in Washington. It was just mano y mano. It's like he just tuned everyone out and says, oh, I'm going to go against this guy who I've been told is the best hitter in the game. The way he challenged, the way he used that pitch mix, like you said, changing the eye levels. And yes, the strikeouts were down a little bit. Yes, the velocity was down a little bit, but he was as effective as ever because he has that spin rate, because he has that pitch mix. And next question I want to ask you about Julio, though, is heading into this season. If he puts together another Cy Young caliber season, he's going to make himself a very wealthy man. He is going to get a big bag represented by Scott Boras. Do you think there is going to be some added pressure? Do you think he'll be able to compartmentalize that for this season? I
think Julio, with the things he's gone through and knowing, the family history with him, nothing's going to get in the way. If anything, it's going to make him hungrier. Because let's be honest, there should have been a Cy Young here at some point with Julio Urias, I think. I mean, and yes, people might go, yeah, but Alcantara did this and Alcantara did that. Great, but I think at some point you got to value what he's done, and I think, and let's say maybe he doesn't win the Cy Young, right? But why finish that far off? Like seventh one time, I'm like, no, you can't do that. You win 20 games. You're the only one who wins 20 games. You finish seventh, no. But there's a chip in his shoulder. There's a chip in his shoulder. I think, and I believe, I'm convinced that if anything, Julio is going to feed off of this until Dave Roberts, oh no, I have one more in me, and I've earned it. And Julio's going to become one of those guys that I always say, there are starting pitchers that become their own best relievers in certain key parts of the game. And they're not looking at the bullpen. They don't want any help. And sometimes that manager comes out or pitching comes out, it's like, what are you doing here? Get out of here. I got this. Now, he does this, but I think overall just an extra inning, an extra 2 outs, an extra 3 outs, it's going to be quite beneficial in convincing himself that I am a complete pitcher no matter what's happened in terms of Cy Youngs. And I know that part of the lineup coming up, even though they might have got me before, I'm going to get them.
No, that is what I love about him. He is absolutely fearless. You could throw the murderers row Yankees up there, and in his mind, he's going to get them all out. And you hear a lot of athletes talk about to be great, you have to be a little delusional. Julio Urias thinks he has the upper hand against any at-bat. But last question I want to ask you about Julio, though, is when you look at his legacy in Los Angeles, he was that former top prospect that realized his potential as an ace. He's the indelible image of the 2020 World Series, getting that final out, striking out Willie Adames. You see murals all around Los Angeles. You consider his Mexican heritage, the fan base, so many Latinos. Do you think when you consider not only what he does on the mound as a player, but also what he brings this community, that he is a must-sign for the Dodgers?
I would say so. I mean, how many times are you going to get a guy that you bred him yourself, you developed him yourself, you know his history better than anybody, you know his injury history better than anybody, he fits right into your program, and this is where obviously the economics get in the way, but economics are not an issue when you talk about prime players, okay? This is a prime player who other teams would go, Julio Urías is a free agent, throw it at him. We want him here. Okay?
Yeah.
I think overall, obviously, not that I think, it takes two. You know, it takes Julio to say, this is where I want to be, and this is what it's going to take, and just have the clear communication between he and his agent and the Dodgers say, we can make it work here. And certainly because all the things that you bring, the traits, the family history, his heritage, you know, being Mexicano, and just how humble he is with the community, how he embraces so many causes around Los Angeles, it is a perfect fit to stay where he is. Hopefully, the dollars, the performance will be there, and we'll be celebrating Julio as a Dodger forever.
That's why I'm going to have mixed emotions when he has a dominant start this year, because every time he has a 10 strikeout game, throws 6 scoreless innings, I'm like, okay, cha-ching, cha-ching,
Yeah,
more money
exactly.
on the bank account. Scott Borst's eyes just lighting up. But another one of the Dodgers' legendary pitchers I want to ask you about, you talked about him earlier, Clayton Kershaw. Last season, 2.28 ERA, a 2.51 expected ERA. Those are his best in a full season in over 6 years. I mean, when he was on the mound last year, he was still a top 10 to 15 pitcher. My question to you is how he's been able to kind of reinvent himself, and do you think he's just going to continue to have success this season?
I see no reason why he's going to stop. I mean, watching Kersh and the way he prepares and the way he has studied the game, the way he has transformed himself into what he is today, considering who he was when he first came in. People forget about this. And Nick Coletti gave me a little course about this. He goes, Jose, go back and look at the walks. Clayton Kershaw was a guy that walked a lot of guys. And the first time I sent him down to the minors, he was not happy. But Ned said, I was clear with him as to why I'm doing this and how much it's going to benefit him. And that ignited a fire in Kershaw that has not gone off yet. He knows who he's facing. He knows who's catching him. And, you know, going back to the catching thing, yes, a lot is made out of his relationship with the Ellises of the world and Barnes, but look at the numbers with him last year with Will Smith.
Yeah, they were
really good, okay?
Yeah.
Let's not take away from Will Smith and the catcher he's become. And obviously you say, yeah, but it's Kershaw, so it doesn't matter who's out there. Well, it does matter, because had the numbers been higher with Will Smith, then it would have been a conversation, right? But Will Smith adapted to knowing pace, tempo, pitch sequences that Kershaw wanted, and pretty much ran with it too. When I look at Kershaw and what could allow him to continue at this level is he can locate, man. The best pitch in baseball is not 100 miles an hour. The best pitch in baseball goes back to a well-located fastball. Ask any hitter, and they're looking fastball. 2-0, 3-1, for example, or a green light, 3-0. And then they see this fastball saying, swing is a fastball, and before you know it, it's the best located fastball in or out. And it's like, oh man, off the end of the bat, I couldn't barrel it for one reason: command, repetition, sequence of running the baseball or cutting it. All those things matter, and that's what, to me, has allowed Clayton to have the command, the control, not only with the fastball, but also look at his release point. And why hitters tell you, well, you think it's there and it disappears, because he's so consistent in that circle. That release point is so consistent, a twitching and a switching of the fingers, and then obviously pronating the baseball the way he knows how to do it. But that's why even Freddie Freeman was like, Jose, you see 92, you see 91, and before you know it, it's out of your hands. And that's why that slider is so effective, because he can start with it and throw for a strike. As he says, I can steal a strike still with a slider early in a count, but he gives the slider different looks early and later in counts. And then that curveball, which is still mighty, asked Mike Trout about it from a few nights ago, puts a different spin and different mentality and vision and depth into the hitter's eyes, which is all the deception that it creates, even at 91, 92.
Yeah, like you said, pristine command. Still has 2++ breaking pitches. Freddie Freeman, I think I saw that too. He talked about, you think it's a fastball, it just falls off the table each and every time. And I don't think he gets enough credit for reinventing himself. Look, Michael Jordan didn't always have the fadeaway, right? He developed that slider, became his money pitch, and I think he's still going to have success. It's just about staying healthy for him. But I'm going to put you on the spot just a little bit about Clayton Kershaw. What does your gut tell you about, is this his last season in Los Angeles? Do you think he'll continue his career after this year?
I think there's more in Clayton, man.
Yeah.
Just the way and everything that he knows is about baseball, right? Yes, he's a family guy, and obviously he lives in Texas. But I just don't see a guy that's still performing at this level just walking away. I mean, he proved it more than one time that he is about winning. He wants more from the Dodgers, which is what I love. He wants success. He wants rings. He wants championships. He wants parades, you know? So if he has a successful season, I just don't see him walking away just for the sake of it. And it's not going to be about money. It's going to be about, I still feel like I can perform. Now, on the other hand, if he sees his abilities deteriorate, he'll be the first one, I believe, in the way that he is built and is thinking to say, I'm just not a good fit anymore and walk away. But from what I saw last year, what I saw in spring training, what I saw the last start against the Angels, I don't see this being his last season.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. As long as he's able to be effective and looked like the guy he has been for the last few years, he's going to go out there and he's going to want to compete. He loves the process. He loves the journey of everything. I think he's going to be more of a Kobe Bryant than a Vince Carter, where when it's gone, he doesn't want to go out there and be a role player, a back-end starter. So I agree with you 100%.
And his family obviously plays a big part. I think if mama and the kids say, Daddy, it's enough, after a great year, he'll be the first one to go, you know what? They're calling me at home. I need to be home.
I've always said, though, let's just move Dallas to L.A. if that's the case, okay? If that's important, we'll do that. But, yeah, a couple other pitchers I want to talk about, too, is some of these young guys coming up. All the hype right now is surrounding Gavin Stone. He had a meteoric rise through the minor league ranks last year at 3 levels, had a 1.48 ERA. The strikeout actually went up at AAA. He got better as the year went along. What have you seen so far from Gavin Stone, and do you think he could have a prominent role on this year's team?
My impression was this guy looks like he's been pitching in the big leagues for 2 or 3 years already. And the way he carried himself from the bullpen sessions that I saw over in Glendale to how he was able to show me, at least from the side, how mechanically sound he is. He's pretty much almost like a throwback type of guy with his follow-through, which is something that's really going to take a lot out of his arm, or less out of his arm.
Interesting.
And that's why his changeup disappears too. Is so deceptive because everything looks the same. I mean, you watch him and the way he ends, you don't know if it's a fastball, changeup, or slider, right? But man, he also has that look and the calm demeanor to go, I got you exactly where you want. In terms of pitching, his changeup could play early in counts and late in counts. Remember, for a lot of young pitchers, it's like, okay, we have this changeup here for you. Let's use it when you're ahead. Let's use it to put somebody away. But to have the ability and the mentality to go, I can get strike one with a changeup and make it look different early and later, it's a huge plus.
Yeah, and I think for him, it's just about not leaving fastballs out over the plate, avoiding the meat of the plate. But that changeup is going to play up. I think that there's nothing that's going to stop him from being a part of this year's team, whether it be a weapon out of the bullpen, whether it be a starter if they need him in that situation. But yeah, I'm extremely high on Gavin Stone. And to me, I almost get Tom Glavine vibes. You know, he's not the biggest guy, but you see him out there. He's still willing to dominate hitters.
You talk about fastball, you know, the biggest thing for him is going to be that, just not get too caught up in the velocity, but separation. You know,
absolutely.
What is separation between my fastball and my changeup, and keep it at a steady pace and pretty much within those margins, and he should have a lot of success. I mean, big league hitters rave about him because they got to see him, last year at the end when they played some games between each other, and they said, "Wow, this kid is for real." He's competing like he was trying to, win a playoff game for them last year.
Yeah, absolutely, and absolutely, he definitely has. I think there's something to be said about that moxie, about his energy, about his poise on the mound, and he's just a great story. Didn't even throw that changeup in college. So yeah, a couple guys I want to ask you too about is this bullpen. So the bullpen, Daniel Hudson, we know he's going to start the year on the IL.
I'll tell you what, he's big, man.
Yeah,
Daniel Hudson will be big in 2023.
Yeah, no, I think so too. I mean, do you think he's the biggest X factor for the bullpen?
I think so, for sure. I mean, we know that there's some questions coming out, with the initial roster as to who's going to close the game, right? To me, it's more about who's going to emerge in the 7th and 8th inning to allow Dave Roberts to say, I have a guy in the 9th already. But Yency Almonte, Graterol, Vesia are very good options. There's no doubt. You got Ferguson in there too. So to me, is more like if you use Evan Phillips in the 7th and 8th, the question becomes even greater to say, who do I save for the 9th? Now, not every game is saved in the 9th inning, right? So Dave Roberts is going to have to play around with, okay, leverage-wise, I have this guy Phillips. What am I saving him for?
Yeah.
The game's right now in the 7th inning, bases loaded. I need that strikeout. This guy throws strikes. And that's one thing, too, that D-Mac, I admire since coming to the Dodgers, is these guys throw strikes. I mean, they don't hurt themselves by walking people. And usually, in opposing dugouts, a lot of times you hear like, you know what, let them bring their bullpen because there's going to be a walk or two there. Not the case with this team from the starters to the relievers. I think for any relief court that has the ability to fill the zone, throw strikes, and finish you off, it's more than a plus for anybody, and it's a headache for the opponent. But the way it's built right now, I am hoping that Yency Almonte, who has a mentality to be a closer, Brusar Graterol has a mentality to be a closer, but to me needs to miss more bats. But man, if he can lead up to Evan Phillips being the guy, because those 3 or 4 guys have emerged, and then get ready for Daniel Hudson, it's going to be better if it works that way. We'll see when the game's going to be saved, but overall, it's nice to have those options.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. Evan Phillips, he is Fireman Phillips for a reason. He emerged as one of the best relievers in all of Major League Baseball, 1.14 ERA, tops in the league in so many different categories. You see him going with that sweeper slider, adding that cutter. He really has become the dude for this Dodgers bullpen. And another thing I want to ask you, too, is do you think that this could actually help the Dodgers pen in the fact that they've had the established closer for so many years? Now you're really in a situation where you almost have to go closer by committee and play those matchups. Really kind of fits into more modern day baseball. Do you think that'll end up helping the Dodgers and allow their bullpen to actually have more success at the end of the day?
I think so. I think overall, when you have, as I say, options against, don't take for granted Alex Vesia.
Yes.
Who is a bulldog mentality type of guy to himself and just wants to go out there and finish you off very quickly. But those options become luxury for a manager. With all the way baseball is designed today and the 3-batter minimum and things like that, things have really changed. So you got to have the ability to have guys that can get righties and lefties out. That's why, to me, a guy like Graterol is so important. You talk about a sweeper, in my opinion, Graterol needs a sweeper. He needs to have a pitch that's put away, slider, because when you come in and throw in triple digits, short arm people, and you pitch upstairs, the eye level to the hitter, that's why we see a lot of contact against him. You watch where he pitches in the zone, and there's not a whole lot of switching and mixing the eye level. So hitters say, it's 100, but I'm going to look up here, and I'm going to find it. Not necessarily on exit velocity. He does allow a lot of soft contact, but there's a lot of balls that are flared and find holes because it's usually triple digits upstairs in the zone. But, man, if he can find that sweeper, and he told me last year, I'm working on it. I had it when I was a starter in the minor leagues, and I'm trying to find it again. This guy could become a premier closer, obviously when the time comes.
Absolutely. So last question about pitching. I want to circle back a little bit to the starting rotation. Dustin May, I had this year being Dustin Mania. I think he's going to make the all-star team. His stuff is electric. He has the potential to really be an ace either this year or down the line. What do you think he's the X factor for the starting rotation? What do you think he needs to do to really realize his potential as a starter?
Fill the zone, man. He's a beauty of a guy because his stuff is very uncomfortable to hit and to stand in the batter's box. They just say, not even without taking a swing, hitters stand there and go, oh my God.
Yeah.
What is this? I have a full hand, full plate in my hands. But with that comes confidence in his stuff itself. He doesn't need to be all that concerned with location, is my opinion. In the history I've seen with players like this, those kinds of arms, if you worry too much about location, you're going to lose it. Home plate's going to get way too wide. One of those guys where I always say, split the middle as a catcher and just let him throw the baseball. Now, when you want to miss a fastball in or off the plate, then you exaggerate a little bit more. But if you start locating too much and thinking about, I want this ball in the inner half, his ball runs so much and at times it cuts so much that I can get him out of whack. And then the four-seamer, when you throw 95 to 100 nowadays, it's not the same that it was, 10, 15 years ago. But with his slider, his changeup, but mainly, Doug, he's got to go out there and throw strikes and trust that his stuff plays against anybody on any particular night.
Yeah, fill the zone. Just trust your stuff. His stuff is as good as anyone. I heard some guys say one time his stuff moves more than a military family.
I'm telling you, it's crazy.
That was me. But, he's fantastic. I think this is a massive year for him. So we're going to switch gears and do some rapid fire to get you out of here. I'm calling this segment the Moda Minute. Yeah, one of my questions was going to be, who's the most famous person in your phone? But we know that's Shohei Ohtani, so I don't even ask that. So we're going to start with, who do you think is going to be the Dodgers home run leader this year?
Mookie Betts.
How many bombs are you going to hit?
Mookie will hit between 32 and 38 home runs.
Ooh, could have a new career high. Okay, who's going to be the bounce back player of the year for the Dodgers?
I think I got to go to the pitching staff. It may not be like this impactful name, but Phil Bickford is going to be a guy that to me is going to take a giant step. I know, not the sexiest pick by
I like
me,
that pick, though.
but I think this guy
Get back to being 2021 Phil Bickford.
Yes, sir.
I like
yes,
that.
Sir.
Okay, which reliever will finish with the most saves?
Evan Phillips.
Team Cy Young Award. Who's going to be the Team Cy Young? Who's going to be the best starting pitcher on the Dodgers this year?
The one and only. Julio, not Iglesias. Julio Urias.
Yeah, I think he might not. I think he might be better than Team Cy Young. Might be the league Cy Young for sure.
Yeah, let's do that.
Who will be the Dodgers Rookie of the Year?
You know, with these names coming up, it doesn't necessarily need to be a guy that started the season here. Man, you know, I'm still going to go Miguel Vargas. There's just way too much in him to be an impactful everyday player. But, man, I'm excited about the possibilities of some young arms coming up and making a difference.
Yeah, but I think Miguel might have like the full season stats. I see what you're saying there. For sure, I agree. Okay, so now we're going to start putting on the spot. Who will be the team MVP?
Team MVP, Freddie Freeman. He just brings too much every single day. He brings way too much. Everything.
MV free. Okay, so now who is, I'll give you a bold prediction for this year's team.
This team, in terms of wins?
No, bold prediction as far as any type of storyline, any topic a player could break out, any type of bold prediction for the 2023 Dodgers.
This team will be a better manufacturing team offensively. It's not going to score as many runs on the average as last season, but I think we're going to see a more exciting type of game on the offensive side. That doesn't necessarily mean slugging. We're going to see more first to thirds. We're going to see more advancing runners. We're going to see more production in terms of quality at bats, and I think that's what's going to play better during the season and into October.
Love it. Okay, so now, what place will the Dodgers finish in the NL West?
Dodgers are going to win the NL West.
Nice. Winning the West. Hear that, Padres? And you're a former Padre, man. That's messed up.
Got my cup of coffee.